Back in May, my wife and I were privileged to go with, or just ahead of, the honor flight that you as members of this church and the members of Cornerstone Baptist in Findlay paid for. And while we were there, we were over at Arlington. I've always, I guess enjoyed is not the word, but I've always felt drawn to that place. And there where the tomb of the unknown soldier is. And if you've never been there, it'd be worth your taking a trip just to see that. And while we were there, we were leaving, and if you're familiar with the area, you come back around behind where the tomb of the unknown soldier is, past the amphitheater that is there, and begin to make your way back down the hill. There is a gravestone just off on your right. If you stop and look at it, you might not be aware of, it's just like all the other ones, but this one is the tombstone of Major Nick Rowe. Major Nick Rowe was killed in the Philippines several years ago, but his story goes further back than that. He was captured by the North Vietnamese while he was a soldier serving in Vietnam. And when he was captured, he was Lieutenant Nick Rowe. And he escaped during the Tet Offensive after 5 years of imprisonment among the North Vietnamese. When they picked him up and put him on the helicopter, if you read the story, 5 Years to Freedom, you'll discover the story. They put him on the helicopter, and at first they didn't believe him when he told them who he was. They said, no, he's dead. And he said, no, I'm alive. And they got on the radio and began to tell the people back at the base who they had, and they informed him that he was no longer Lieutenant Nick Rowe, but that he had been promoted twice while in captivity, and he was now Major Nick Rowe. His story is a means of encouragement. I remember reading it as just a young man and said, God, give me some of what it takes to do what he did in the ministry. I think heroism is not just something that is displayed on the battlefield. I think it's something that's displayed in life day by day. When you go to vote this week, that's a mark of heroism, I believe. But I admired him in the sense that he endured such a great fight. And if you were to see him walking down the street, and in honesty, if you were to see Brother Gary walking down the street or in the mall without this medal around his neck, you would have no idea that he is a hero. And I would like to just remind you this morning as a pastor that there are heroes all around you that paid a price so that you could do whatever it is that you do. But more than that, I would like to remind you that there is a responsibility that somehow we do our part to be worthy of that purchase that they've made. You know, as a pastor, we talk about the sacrifice of the Lord Jesus Christ, the greatest sacrifice the world has ever known and ever will know, the sacrifice of a Savior for the sinner. But that's not where we end the message as a preacher. It is my job to remind you that as Christians, we've been called on to walk worthy of the sacrifice that was made for us. And so, as Brother Beikirch comes to speak to us this morning, may I remind you, and I think he's going to share a little of his testimony with us this morning, that he's not here just for us to say, wow, he's a great American, because he is that. But he's here to remind us that I have someone that looks up to me, someone who watches me, someone who listens to me. And I need to be heroic in the role that I play, whether it be as a father or a grandfather or whatever it might be. I need to be the influence that they need. And that may call on me to be a sacrificing individual from time to time. And certainly as I reach this world with the gospel, it demands that sometimes I sacrifice my own personal pride because they need to hear that there is a heaven to gain. I am honored to introduce to you this morning again Brother Gary Beikirch, recipient of the Medal of Honor for services in Vietnam. I'm going to dispense with reading his citation because I think you've heard it a number of times, and I think maybe he can just tell you a little bit about his story this morning. God bless you, brother. Come ahead.
Thank you, buddy. I guess that means that it's on, huh? I got to first of all thank, I believe it's John I have to thank for singing that song. It's a bittersweet song. Tony and I were talking to him last night, and we were mentioning to him how much that song meant. And the first time I heard it was at one of the veterans' dinners here. And hearing that song changed my life. It was just the mansions of the Lord. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. Got to put me in a different place, a place that I'm commonly at, and that is trying to struggle for words to get through the tears and get through everything else that's going on. So I'll just hide behind the pulpit here for a little while till I get myself together. But it is good to be back. Hope has a very special place in our heart. Not just the hope of Jesus Christ, but the hope of Toledo, Ohio. You are all very, very special. As many of you sent prayers and best wishes through our battles with cancer, that was just one of the things that knit our hearts together. Not only the many visits that my wife and I have been here, but you are all a very special place, and it is nice to be here again. As Pastor said, I would like to share my story. But as I said last night, just as my story is, the Medal of Honor is the Medal of Honor is representative of so many things, and I'm not going to go into everything that I said last night, but it's a symbol. It's something that says something to all who see it. It's a representative of millions and millions of men and women who have done millions and millions of selfless acts. And I said last night that I was very honored to be able to be counted as one of the many, countless numbers of men and women who have stood up and defended and served this country. I'm honored to be counted as one of you. And today, I am going to share my story, but it's just one soldier's story. As Tony said during the first class, any one of you could stand up here and share your story, and it would be just as touching, just as powerful. If you haven't read the poem yet, as Pastor mentioned, read through that. This is what it's all about. My particular story is not a story, though, about what I have done. My soldier story is more about a story about what God has done. Just as this medal, it's not about me, and I do not wear it for my honor in any way, for anything that I have done. I wear it for His honor and for what He has done in my life. Okay, I feel like I got myself under control a little bit here. So I can go back to whatever script I have. It was interesting coming out here because my wife, up until about a week ago, she was planning on being here. And I got to be careful of what I'm saying because she's not really here, but she's watching live stream. She texted me and she said, "I'm watching you." Hi, hon. So I have to be careful because I want to tell the story that I often tell before I share my story. And coming out here, she was kind of concerned. She said, I'm really concerned about you driving all by yourself. I'm older now. I'm 66 years old, 65 years old. She said, you're not like you're 25, 30 years old, and you're traipsing all over the country. You're going to be riding alone. And she's worried about that. So I'm riding, and all of a sudden I start getting texts from her about going through Erie, Pennsylvania. I start getting texts. Are you okay? If she wants me to text, I'm going to have to text while I'm driving. And I'm going to drive right into the back end of this 12-wheeler. I'm okay. I'll text you at a rest stop. But she's got this fear or concern that about my driving ability. And I'm thinking I was thinking about that as I was here this morning, and she says, "I'm watching you." Those of you that are old enough, you may remember Dick Tracy and little watches they used to speak into and stuff. That's what we got now. We got Dick Tracy stuff. This is cool. It really is. FaceTime. My gosh, last week at a baptismal at our service, our daughter couldn't be there, but she wanted to watch the people being baptized, so she FaceTimed me and she said, point the camera towards the baptismal, and she's watching. And I thought, wow, this is great, you know. But it reminds me of when my wife and I used to travel, and GPS, anything like that, wasn't even in existence. MapQuest was the technology of the day. And I often tell this story, and I'll make it real short, although my wife would probably want to make sure they get all the details in there because that's just the way she is. She's a detailed person. Can I use this water here? Thank you. We're supposed to be going to Altoona, PA, and I MapQuested the directions. On our way down there, we found out that I left the directions home. And so she's saying, you better stop and ask for directions. And I said, why? I'm a Green Beret. I don't need directions. I can find my way through the jungles. I can do everything, you know. Who needs directions? Long story short, I knew Altoona was in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was south of New York, so I just head south. I kept the sun to my left, and I just keep going. We got to Altoona, but the next step was getting to the Marriott Hotel, which is where we were really supposed to be. And she was saying, because we did make it to Altoona, and it was a quiet ride. I got to mention that. It was because she was so angry with me. I don't know, guys, if you've ever been there when your wife knows that you should be doing something, and you know you should probably do it, but your pride is saying, I'm not going to do this. And how she can hit you with that silence, you know, and you just know what's happening, all the thoughts that she's having. So it was a quiet ride, even once we got to Altoona. And then she said, well, how are we going to get to the Marriott? Well, wouldn't you know that as we're coming into Altoona, on the highway, there's this big Marriott sign. And I said, I didn't say anything, I just looked at her and smiled. But something was happening. As Tony and I were talking about when we came here this morning, we were walking in, we said, you know what, we've ridden down the interstate there in 75 because we could get there this way, but we couldn't get back to the hotel because there's something about being on the interstate, you can see it, but you can't get to it, you know. So that's what we found out about this Marriott. I see the sign, and I know that's where we got to be, but I can't get there. You know, I take the nearest exit, and I'm finding that more and more the Marriott's getting further and further away, you know. And she just drops every once in a while, you should stop and ask for directions. And I said, sorry, I can do this, hon. I'm a Green Beret. Trust me, I got the vision. I got the vision. Yeah. But somehow she wasn't buying into the vision, you know. She wasn't accepting it. Well, after going the wrong way on a one-way street, which reminds me, this morning, Tony and I made a left-hand turn on a one-way street, and I said, it's okay, it's a Sunday morning, I got Rhode Island plates, I can make this turn. Yeah. But we were going the wrong way on a one-way street. I finally stopped, and I asked this guy at the gas station, I said, see that sign? Because we could still see it. I said, that's where I want to go. I want to go there. And he didn't say you can't get there from here, that's a joke, but he didn't say that, but he gave me some directions, some rights, lefts, and things like that I had to make. And so I started making the rights and left, and I could see the sign getting closer and closer, and I've got these visions in my mind now about, oh, great, you know, it's been a real stressful ride, and I'm looking forward to just like that commercial, just going into the room and lying on the bed and just relaxing. Not to happen, no. Because as we pulled up to the sign, I pulled into the parking lot, pulled up underneath the sign, turned the car off, and I turned and looked at my wife, and she didn't say a word. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to, because I knew what she was thinking. See, because all that was there was the sign. The Marriott Hotel had moved. It wasn't there. You know? Yeah. We could have spent the night in the parking lot by the Marriott sign, but somehow I didn't think that would go over too well. So I finally asked for directions, and where's the Marriott Hotel? But I tell that story because it's got a very special message and a purpose in my story. You see, there's a verse in Proverbs 14, verse 12, that says there's a way that seems right unto a man. There's a way that seems right to you and to me. It's the plan, it's the vision, it's the goals that you've got set for yourself. It's what you believe is to be. And you got every step, every strategy, everything in place to reach that goal. And you think that's the right goal. There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end is death. There's a way that seems right. That's where the motel is. But the end is just a Marriott sign. And you end up by saying, how did I get here? This is not what I expected. This is not the plan. Life's journeys that we're on, my journey, my story, one soldier's story, is a story about a journey, of a plan that I was following. And sometimes those journeys are really, really tough. I was recently reading something online, and I came across this phrase, and I thought that was really cool. And it was another one of those things that I'm writing down. You can write it down, Pastor, and take credit for it, too. But this one guy mentioned, yep, the FUD factor is working in my life again. The FUD factor. Anybody heard of that? The FUD factor. It stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Did you ever have the FUD factor work in your life? When things start to happen and you start to fear, you start to question. It's like the fog of battle that Tony was talking about. You start to question yourself. You become uncertain about what you're doing. And then doubt creeps in, and all of a sudden, you're not as efficient or as effective as you could be. And your journey starts falling apart. And your journey starts becoming a real challenge to you. And you're saying, this is not what I expected. This is not part of my plan. Another quote that I saw just last night posted on Facebook. It was cool. It's because the hardest thing in life, because many times you'll find these challenges and stuff, and you'll see bridges there, you know. I can get across this challenge. I can get across this great chasm. I can get across this obstacle because there's a bridge there. But the greatest challenge in life is to know which bridge to cross and which bridge to burn. That's the bottom line, is every challenge. That's a challenge to every journey. What bridge do I go across? And what ones do I avoid and burn? Because there's a way that seems right, but the end is death. I've had the FUD factor operating in my life recently. And Tony and I were just talking about this. When you start getting yourself, no matter how many years you've been a Christian, no matter how many years you've served the Lord, Satan is always going to operate that FUD factor. Fears, uncertainties, and doubts. Anything he can do to keep you off focused, off balance. And I'll talk about that in my story. But what I want to do today is share with you my journey. And maybe, I don't know where you are in your journey, but what I'm hoping is that as I share my journey and some of the things, 3 things basically that I've learned on my journey, I'll share these 3 things, and I'm hoping that maybe on your journey you can plant them in your road, in your path, is like guideposts, benchmarks, little roadside assistance, you know, the little call boxes. This is where I can go to receive some help, receive some encouragement. Little roadside assistance boxes for you. Because these are 3 things that I've learned that even within this past week, as the FUD factor was operating in my life like never before, I've had to go back and open up that box for some roadside assistance and dial up God and say, God, help me. I want to share with you those 3 things that maybe you might be able to use on your journey. The first roadside assistant box as you're traveling. In life, be careful, because things aren't as they seem. Be careful, because life isn't as it seems. As Solomon said in Proverbs, there's a way that seems right, but the end is death. I had a plan, I had a vision, I had a journey mapped out what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a Green Beret. I was going to be a professional soldier, a member of the armed forces for the rest of my life. That was, I've told the kids, I work as a middle school counselor, and I've told them many times, but when they say, how did you end up being a middle school counselor? And I said, it's kind of a long story, because I was originally going to be a professional soldier. Tony was a professional baseball player. I was going to become a professional soldier, a Green Beret. That was my goal. And the challenges that I had to go through, the training, the tests, to achieve that goal were tremendous. They tested me. And I came through with such a tremendous sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment and achievement. Being a Green Beret, being a member of a 12-man Special Forces team, and then to be deployed finally to Vietnam, living in the jungles of Vietnam. I was the team medic. I was responsible for 2,300 people, their welfare. Their well-being was in my hands. As a 24-year-old guy, wow, what a tremendous achievement. And Vietnam was such a beautiful, beautiful country. Tremendously beautiful. It was gorgeous. They have tours now that cost $7,000 to go to Vietnam, and they take you through all the mountains, which is where I was in the highlands. The beautiful jungles and the waterfalls. It was a beautiful place. $7,000 to go there. They paid me to be there. I got $300 a month. And I was able to do all that. You know, except for the tigers and the snakes and occasional ambush and firefights. It wasn't a bad place to be. I enjoyed it. It was my dream. It was my fulfillment. It was my achievement of what I wanted. It was my Shangri-La. But there was something that always bothered me because in the team house there was a saying there that on a sign that said, "To really live, you must almost die. To those that fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know." To really live, you must almost die. That used to bother me because I used to think, what do you mean? I'm living. I couldn't ask for anything more. There's nothing more I would want to make my life successful. I have it all. But you're saying to really live, I got to almost die? What do you mean? To those who fight for it, life has a meaning the protected are going to never know. And I was about to learn that. April 1st, 1970, our camp came under attack, surrounded for 30 days by 10,000 of the enemy. My world was shattered. My illusions, my bubble burst. What happened to my Shangri-La? It was another one of those moments. How did I get here? This is not, I didn't write this into my script for my life. This is not part of my plan. What happened? What happened was, I'd forgotten that I was living in the middle of a war. That's why I was there. In life, be careful because things aren't as they seem. We are living in the middle of a war, Christians. John Eldredge wrote a book, and in there is a quote that is pretty special to me. He said, until we come to terms as Christians, until we come to terms with the fact that we live our lives in the context of war, we are going to misinterpret or misunderstand 90% of what happens to us in life. Those moments when you say, why is this happening? What's happening to me? It's not part of the way life is supposed to be. Well, it is, because we are living our life in the midst of a war. Ephesians 6 tells us that. 1 Peter 3 tells us that our enemy is Satan. And the goals and objectives of that war, his goal is he wants to keep us from finding out what life is really all about. If he can't keep us from finding out what life is all about, and the way he'll do that is to keep us from finding God. Because you won't know what life is all about as long as God's not even a part of your life. It's only once God becomes part of your life that life begins to make sense and have real meaning and purpose. So Satan's goal is to keep us from, first of all, finding what life is all about. And he'll do that by trying to keep God out of your life. If he can't keep God out of your life, what he will do then is he'll try every technique that he can to keep you from experiencing the fullness of life that God wants you to have, to keep you from experiencing what it is that life and what God has for you and what life is really all about. The tactics that he uses are the tactics that are used in every war. Diversions, ambushes, booby traps. He'll sometimes lull you into thinking that things are going great, and then all of a sudden, boom, things will explode. You didn't expect it. It's like an IED explosion. Sometimes he'll come at you with a full frontal assault, As Tony was saying this morning, maybe it'll be when you find out that your sister has cancer, or your wife has cancer, or that friends have betrayed you. Whatever it is, he will try to keep you from experiencing the life that God has for you. And the way he'll do that too is he'll try to get you to think that maybe life is so good that I don't really need God. That's a delusion. There's a way that seems right. Maybe if I just have the success, maybe if I have everything that I need, except God, maybe life will be okay. I don't need God, because what more could I want? Or he may hit you with confusion and disappointment, discouragement, or guilt to get you to start to think that life is so bad there couldn't be a God. Those are the strategies and the tactics that Satan will use. What are the strategies that we can use in this battle? I've talked with a lot of veterans, a lot of men that have fought in wars from World War II. Actually, I talked with a veteran who fought in the Boxer Rebellion. And no matter whether you fought in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, there's something you need to know about fighting battles. It doesn't matter what theater you're in or what country. Where the battles are fought and won and lost are not out here. They're fought and won or lost in here and in here. That's where the battles are truly fought and truly won or lost. What goes on in here? When somebody cries medic, where do they fight that battle? They fight it here and here. This is what I'm trained to do. I care about that guy. It's one right here, and I go, regardless of what's out here. The battle is first fought, won, or lost, right in here and here. As Christians, the battles that you fight daily are going to be fought and won or lost in your heart or in your mind. And how can you prepare for that? Well, in the military, we were always taught that what works in training works in battle. What you learn in training, you learn it because it works in battle. Tony was talking to me afterwards, and you talk about that fog of battle, and when that fog hits, what do? You do what you've been trained to do. It's ingrained in you. It's instilled in you. It becomes second nature, and you just do it, and that's what gets you through. Christian, when you are hit in those battles, is your mind trained? Is your heart been trained? Have you hid his word in your heart? Have you let the mind of Christ become your mind? If you have, you will be prepared better to fight that battle. Do you have that armor that Ephesians 6 talks about? Do you have the shield of faith? Do you have the sword of the Spirit? Are you equipped to really do battle in the war that we are living in? And unless you come to believe and understand that we live our life in the context of war, you are going to misinterpret and misunderstand 90% of what happens to you in life. And you're going to be sitting there going, why? Why? Remember, in life, life is not as it seems. There's a way that seems right, but the end is death. But in the same way, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it still isn't as it seems, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And as it says out there, nay, we are more than conquerors through Christ who loved us. No matter what kind of battle you're facing, no matter what the size of the army, the enemy, greater is he that is in you. Life is not as it seems. Victory is already won. There's a popular song now about raising the flag, the white flag. I surrender. I surrender, God, because I know you've already won the battle. I'm going to quit fighting. I'm just going to raise your flag and surrender to you because I know you've won the battle. That's the first box with roadside assistance. In life, be careful because life is not as it seems. Second one, in life, what happens in you is more important than what happens to you. What happens in you is more important, of far greater importance than anything that happens to you. Many times when I'll sit and I'll talk with guys, or pastors will invite me to come in and talk, and then after I'm sharing, I can tell they're kind of they're taken back because they want to hear war stories. That's not my story. My story is not a story about what I have done. It's about what God has done. They want to hear about what it's like to see 10,000 screaming people running at you and shooting, wanting to kill you. They want to hear what it's like to be shot 3 times. They want to hear what it's like to have B-52 strikes come in on you. They want to hear what it's like to be in hand-to-hand combat. They want to hear those war stories. But I've learned that what happens in you is much more important than what happens to you. And I tell them, that battle, 30 days, that was a piece of cake. Piece of cake compared to the greatest battle I ever fought. You see, the greatest battle that I ever fought was fought about a week after the Battle of Dak Siang. I fought that battle in the hospital bed in Vietnam when I was fighting for my life, and I kept going unconscious, and I couldn't stop it. I had been unconscious, gone unconscious quite a few times in college, but this was different, you know. There's a little bit of difference. Ecclesiastes 8:8, there's a verse that says, "There's no man that hath power to retain his spirit." No man has power to retain his spirit. Neither has he power in the day of death. And there's no discharge in that war. Another wise thing Solomon said, because he knew that in the day of death, none of us can give ourselves one more minute, one more second than what God has already allotted. When God says now, it's now, and you're gone. I was fighting death. I was fighting, and I was losing. I was fighting the greatest battle of my life. I didn't want to go unconscious. I was using everything that I could muster, everything that I had learned in Special Forces training to try to keep myself, to give myself one more minute of life. And I would go unconscious. And I would say, is this it? Am I dying now? Is this final death? You know what the scariest sounds of battle is? The scariest sounds of battles are not B-52 strikes. It's not bullets pinging off your steel pot. It's not airstrikes. The scariest sounds of battle is when you're lying in an ICU ward and you hear a man lying next to you take his last breath. And he's gasping. And you look over and you watch his eyes roll back and he dies. Those are the scariest sounds of battle. And there's no discharge in that war. We all are going to fight that battle. And when that white flag of surrender is draped over him, that's it. It's the final call. I was fighting that battle. What happens in me was much greater and more important than what was happening to me. What was happening in me in that hospital bed? I was learning that I could not depend on myself. I was learning that when it came to fighting death, I was a loser. I could not depend on the things that had achieved success and had brought me confidence and assurance throughout my whole life. I could not count anymore on those things that had brought me through Green Beret training and had brought me over to where I was living my dream. All those things that enabled me to get here were no good anymore. What was happening in me? I was dying. I was learning that I could not depend on myself. I could not depend on myself to give myself one more minute of time. I was learning that when it comes to battling death, I'm a loser. But I didn't know where to go. I knew I couldn't trust myself, but I didn't know where else to turn to. That was the greatest battle that I've ever fought. And it really set the stage for the third roadside assistance box. First roadside assistance, when you're going through some struggles and you don't know what's going on, open up that roadside assistance. Okay, Gary, it's okay. In life, things aren't as they seem. You think that things are confused and destroyed, and you think that you're going to lose. It's okay. Greater is he that's in you than is he that's in the world. Hang in there. Trust me. Second, roadside assistance. Gary, don't pay attention to what's happening to you. What's more important is what's happening in you. Gary, I hope you're learning that you can't depend on yourself anyhow. I'm hoping you're learning that you need to look to me because I am the only one. God is the only one that can get us through and get us to that other side. He is the bridge that will get us across that challenge. I learned that I couldn't depend on myself. But at that point in my life, I didn't know who I could depend on. And then I came to the third roadside assistance box. Opened up that box. And this is the box that I've had to use, especially these last couple weeks. Gary, be reverent with what you don't understand. I know you're not going to understand what's going on here, but be reverent with it. Be reverent. Look to God. Trust me. I've got a plan, Gary. I know you don't understand. I know you're confused. I know you're lost. And you think I've deserted you. But trust me. Be reverent with what you don't understand. You see, I was overwhelmed in the hospital bed. I was dying. I knew I couldn't save myself, but I didn't know who to go to. I was 24 years old. I wasn't supposed to be dead yet. I was immortal. You know, all 24-year-olds are immortal. It wasn't my plan to die. I was one of the good guys. It's not supposed to be like this, God. The FUD factor was really working. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. Who do I turn to? I know I can't rely on myself anymore. I can't be dependent on who I am. Because who I am is a loser when it comes to battling death. Who do I turn to? One of the times that I woke up, there was a chaplain there. And he said, "I'm just glad to see you're awake, son." I said, "Sir, I'm glad to be awake." He was handing out crosses. And he said, "Would you like to pray?" I said, "Sir, I don't know how to pray. I don't even know who to pray to." And he said, "That's okay, son. God knows how to listen." And I just said a very simple prayer. God, if you're real, so much for praying in faith, God, I don't know if starting out a prayer with "if" is a sign of faith, God, if you're real, I need you. Regardless of what my words said, he saw my heart. He saw that there was nothing there anymore. There was no vestiges of anything. Nothing was left. Everything had done battle with death, and everything was defeated. I had nothing left. God, if you're there, and if there really is something like a God, and if that's you, I need you right here, because I'm scared. Even if I don't die, I'll never walk again, because the first time I was wounded, I got shot in the spine. And I was supposed to be paralyzed for the rest of my life. God, if you're real, I need you. Simple prayer, but a tremendously powerful response. All of a sudden, something happened. I didn't jump up and run around the ward and start touching people and healing people and things like that. I didn't pull all the tubes out of my body. But where those battles were being fought here and here, God came to here and here. And there was a peace that was placed in my heart. And all of a sudden, it didn't matter if I lived or died. I didn't care. I didn't care, really, because, wow, there's something in me now that is real. And it's greater than my fear. It's greater than my uncertainty. It's greater than my doubt. It's greater than death that's at my door. It's real. And it can enter my world. It can transcend from wherever it comes from. It can come right to where I am, in this small little hospital in Vietnam. And it's become a part of my life. It's real. My life was changed. There was a peace that was there. But that's not the end of the story. It could have ended there, because now I had this knowledge that there's something maybe like a God that's out there that can transcend mystically somehow and affect my life, change things. But knowing that is different than knowing God. I spent the next 2 years trying to find out about this force that I knew was real. Nobody could take that away from me. When I went back to college and I took philosophy courses and stuff, there was many debates and things about the existence of God, and I was never a good debater anyhow. But they could never debate what happened to me in that hospital bed. You could never take that away. That's something that I have forever. When those FUD factors start to work, I can always go back to that hospital bed. And I can always go back to many, many more opportunities now where God has transcended reality and changed my heart and my mind and given me peace no matter what's happening out there. What happens in you is more important than what's happening to you. Because what happens in you is you depend less on yourself, and the peace of God can become a part of who you are. The life of Christ can become a part of who you are. And that's what should be happening in you. And God may allow a tremendous amount of things to happen to you so that that can happen in you, because that's his goal. Like I said, that wasn't the end of my story. I searched for 2 years trying to find out about that God. Finally, I met a friend, and he said, "Gary, do you value our friendship?" I said, "Yes, I sure do." He said, "Do me a favor, read this book, will you?" He gave me a New Testament. I started reading through the Matthew. Started at the beginning, Matthew, Mark, Luke. And I went back to him and I said, "Buck," that was his name, Buck. I said, "What kind of a book is this? It's kind of the same story. What is this?" He said, "Gary, do me a favor. Just trust me. Keep reading." So I read through the book of John. God was working now. His word was entering my heart and my mind. By the time I got to John 14, it says, "Let not your heart be troubled, Gary." I was surprised to see my name there. I've often told people, you may not know God, but he knows you, and he knows you very personally. John 14 starts out, "Let not your heart be troubled, Gary. You believe in God, don't you?" "Yeah, I do. I met him in a hospital bed in Vietnam. I know him." "You believe in God? Believe also in me, Gary." It was Jesus speaking. He said, "Gary, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to a Father but by me, Gary." Got to John 15, verse 9, and he says, "As the Father has loved me, Gary, so have I loved you." "You've loved me?" "Yeah. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." I heard that many, many times. I had no idea that it came from the Gospel of John. "You mean you died for me, Jesus?" "Yes, I did." John 15:15. "And Gary, I've called you my friend. You're my friend, Gary. You're my battle buddy." And then the 16th verse. "And I have a plan for you, Gary. I've ordained you. Come to me, Gary." July 2nd, 1972. 3 o'clock in the morning, I knelt down in a camping trailer and accepted Christ as my Savior. My life has never been the same since then. For the next year, I said, "Okay, God, what do you want me to do in my life? You said you got a plan. What do you want me to do?" Well, I had to get to the point where I would say, "Not my will, but yours, God." September of 73, I got to that point. I said, "Okay, God, I don't want to go to med school. I don't want to be a professional baseball player. I don't want to be the doctor. I can't be a professional soldier anymore. Not my will, God, but yours. Whatever you want, I will do." September 73. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call saying I was being awarded the Medal of Honor. 2 weeks after I said, "God, whatever you want, I will do." And he said, "Okay, here's something for you. But it's not about you, Gary. It's not about anything that you've done. But it's about what I've done in your life. It's not an honor for you, Gary. It's something I want you to wear for my honor. And for over 40 years, I've worn it for his honor. I could not be a member of the U.S. Army Special Forces, but for over 40 years, I've been a member of the Army of God. And for 40 years, he's opened doors and allowed me to go in and share my story. For 40 years, he's guided me through many, many dark moments when I couldn't see the way out. I don't have the pride anymore when I say I'm not going to ask for directions, because I ask for directions all the time now. Sometimes even from my wife. But he's been my guide. He's been my strength. When I knew that there was nothing more that I could do, I turned to God. And he's been there to help me. He's been my hope. When I couldn't see, when the FUD factor was working like crazy, he's been the hope for me. He's been the comfort in my life. For over 40 years, he's given my life meaning and purpose. There's still much I don't understand about my life, and I still don't really see the plan all that clearly at times. Sometimes the FUD factor really, really works overtime. And I just have to continue walking by faith, stopping at the roadside assistance and picking up the phone, and he's saying, okay, Gary, life's not as it seems. I know you feel overwhelmed, but it's okay. There are people there around you that you can't see. There's more of us than them, and you are more than a conqueror. Okay, God, yeah, okay. Oh, wait a minute, God. Yes, Gary, I know what's happening to you, but don't worry about that. What's more important is what's happening in you. You're learning to trust in me, Gary, not yourself. Let go, surrender to me. Okay, God. Okay. Yeah, but God, okay, Gary, I know you don't understand, but just pray. Be reverent. Look to me. Okay, God, I can do this. But I keep having to go to those roadside assistance stands. I still don't know a lot what's going on, but there are a few things that I do know. I do know that there's a way that seems right, but the end is death. And I do know that life is not as it seems. I do know that what's more important is what happens in us than what happens to us. And I do know that we need to be reverent with the things we don't understand. I do know that we have to walk by eyes of faith, listening for that still small voice that, as Isaiah says, this is the way. Walk ye here. Go this way, Gary. It'll be there if you'll listen. I do know that on this journey, my favorite verse is Nahum 1:3. Nahum 1:3 says that God has his way in the whirlwinds and in the storms, and the clouds are just the dust of his feet. Isn't that comforting to you? I don't know, but for me it is. The clouds of my storms are just the dust of his feet. That gives me comfort because I know he's there. He's never going to leave me. And he's going to see me through. I know that. I know that there's a way that seems right, but the end is death. And I do know that he will guide and never leave me on the way that he wants me to go. Because as John 15:16 says, I know he has a plan. I know he has a plan. And no matter how successful you are in life, no matter what kind of successes and what kind of achievements you logged up, whether it's financial, prestige, power, no matter how many successes you have in your life, now that I'm 65 years old, I look back on all those achievements, and what matters to me now is not the successes. What matters to me now is significance. There's a big difference between success and significance in life. And your life will never achieve any significance as long as Jesus Christ is not a part of your life. No matter what kind of successes you have, you will never achieve significance until you become a part of Jesus and his plan for you. Because it's only through his plan for your life, not your plan for your life, but his plan for your life, that you will achieve significance.